the third National Planning Commission has elected its members. Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, has been appointed chairperson of the third National Planning Commission for a 5-year term to 2026. Professor Tinyiko Maluleke will be serving as a deputy chairperson of the NPC. I'm joined now by Dr. Kefiloe Masiteng, currently the acting secretary of planning at the NPC, to give us more insight about the new term. Dr. Masiteng, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Well, it's going to be a very interesting 5 years ahead. And let me just explain why I use those words, because when I think of National Planning Commission, I think of the NDP, I think of 2030, which from next year is about 8 years away. I mean, we're getting closer and closer to 2030, but I don't know if we'll meet any of those targets. Coronavirus pandemic has even put in more spanner in the works. Or am I wrong, Dr. Masiteng?
You are totally correct, Dan. We are getting the third commission at a point where we see ourselves having been 10 years, having started implementing the NDP. We are at a point where we know that then we are moving into the next term that gives us only 10 years or less than just 10 years towards 2030. To implement the goals and the targets of our development agenda. But of importance is that we are at a time where now we have just been 2 years into a challenge that has just borne bare. The challenges, the structural challenges of our population, and why we are struggling in actual fact even to meet the objectives of meeting the needs of the people when we see what COVID has done to the population. Less even about the fact that even by the time COVID came, we were already not on the right trajectory towards the economic growth, not on the right trajectory towards reducing poverty and inequality. And worse off, we are also realizing that the levels of employment continue to just not meet those targets that have been met. So the critical challenge is that we are off course in terms of the trajectory that has been set towards the country meeting the targets of development by 2030. Now we are even looking at beyond 2030. How is the country going to organize itself, fight harder, dream bigger, and make sure that the targets that are set are better informed? The discourse is about how do we ensure that everybody in the country is part of the National Development Plan. We implement it in a manner that everybody in the country sees themselves as part of the story, but of importance, implementing the National Development Plan, not as a plan of government, but as the plan of the country. Civil society, all social partners, the private sector, everybody should be able in the remaining years to 2030 to be able to be part of the story as we write it about our country.
Dr. Masiteng, I mean, one of many revelations that coronavirus pandemic has emphasized is the need for partnership, collaboration across societal sectors. It's the need to connect the relevant dots and make everybody work towards one goal. Is it possible that this third National Planning Commission can reimagine the NDP for 2030 to take it far beyond? Because you've mentioned a number of challenges that the country currently has. Is it possible to reimagine NDP 2030 and extend it to be more meaningful?
I think one of the critical areas that we have identified, that the previous National Planning Commission has identified, is the need to reinvigorate the manner in which the NDP is implemented. And that would mean the current NPC has to make sure that even if we struggle with anything else, we rally this society behind the plan. It has been there for the past 10 years. So the first 10 years have given us serious lessons of why we fail, where we fail, and therefore where can we turn the corner or course correct in a manner that takes us in a better trajectory towards 2030. So the lessons that are there, the information that is the per sector, for different environments, for different populations is enough for them as the people that are participating, are contributing, are writing, are activists in their own sectors. So they are part of the narrative that is already out there. So what we need to be able to do is to come together, build the social compacts, the partnerships, the collaboration that is able to take all sectors together on board, but also being able to create a discourse that is taking us all forward.
Dr. Masiteng, you've mentioned several times that there are lessons, therefore there's information available, there's data. I'm sure there's all kinds of good stuff that the NPC is sitting with. What, in your view, should this new incoming NPC during its term do to stop the perception that maybe it's only about talk, the Commission talks and plans, and less about action? What should change to make sure that things really get done? Because we don't have a lot of time to 2030.
I think it is the deliberations, it is the talks that are there that need to change into action. If this decade can be a decade of action, our president continuously says we should be able to see the changes in the lives of the people. We should be able to see anything that is being conversed, anything that is part of a deliberation, any part of changes in our policies should be able to speak the impact to the people that are the beneficiaries of anything we are talking about as part of the development agenda of South Africa. So anything that we are going to talk about going forward, whether it is in the social sector, we should be able to put a position of the National Planning Commission that speaks to how then the social sector, for example, dealing with issues like dealing with issues like social protection, and even when we look at the economic environment, there is already thinking and research that has been put onto the table to how do we revitalize the economy of the country that we have already seen even before COVID, that it was off course. How do we ensure that the work on the infrastructure in the country that is a low-hanging fruit is starting to be able to see and bear fruits that can be expected? So we now know where the challenges are. We now know that we have not been able to build the social compacts that take us forward together as a nation in building towards the national planning or national plan as a plan of the country. Therefore, it means come one, come all, every sector, every social partner should be part of this remaining journey in the 9 years to 2030. And yes, by the time we get to 2026, there are very interesting things that we should have done. Okay. It would be a point where 2030 would have covered a point where we would be talking 30 years of democracy. Therefore, this National Planning Commission should be able to have a say on how we are doing within those years. Okay. 10 years of implementation of the NDP, being in the middle of the current 5-year plan that is called the MTSF. But also, of importance is their ability to talk to the short-term issues that the country has set itself on path to do in terms of economic recovery as well as dealing with the COVID issues.
Okay, there's a lot there, actually. I love the words decade of action for the NDP, and that's really what this country is going to need more and more to make sure that certain goals are achieved. There's been so many reversals already thanks to the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you very much, Dr. Kefiloe Masiteng, Acting Secretary of Planning at the National Planning Commission, just talking to us as the new or the third National Planning Commission is taking over.